now I'll invite Sachin, who is into research and market analysis. Sachin, what do you think about how global market trends are affecting Indian steel industry, specifically our medium and small scale people who are predominantly IFA members? And when I talk about those market trends, then not just market trends, even the eventualities, certain events, like what do you say, downward trend in Chinese consumption, whereas they are still the number one manufacturers. They have not curbed or controlled, contained their production in line to what decrease in consumption has happened in China because of real estate boom going down. So Chinese have already started exporting their stuff and dumping them, right, I would say dumping them in India on a very destructive prices. So a certain event like a downward trend in consumption in China, wherein their production is going off high, and two more geopolitical events like a prolonged Ukraine war and disturbances caused by some military conflicts on major sea logistic routes. How they are currently affecting Indian steel market and how we foresee them to more affect positively or negatively, whatever is, as per your analysis.
Right. Mohit, just a question I want to understand. Is this related to or focused around the mini mills or in general the sector? So if you could just elaborate on.
I would request you to
Mini mills.
draft your answer to all the members of IFA, because right now I cannot differentiate about our delegates and audience who will be of a mini scale or a medium scale. Broadly, what will be the effect of these trends or international events on IFA members?
Okay.
For which they should be ready.
Right. Okay. I think it's a very deeper question and, would require a little deliberation. Perhaps I will just border around
Sachin,
what, yeah.
We are in Mumbai and Sachins of Mumbai are always given the toughest task.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I can actually go into it straight away, the answer, I think most of us already know. It is actually hitting us on the prices, first of all. But let me just step back, and then relate to the previous questions that you had asked Madhur. So when I look at the, Indian steel sector, so and particularly the IFA members, I think we are largely present in one or two or three major products, right? So give an example, if you look at this auditorium itself, I don't know beyond the foundation whether we really are supplying anything to the superstructures here, right? Be it in terms of the flat or the others. So I think that if you start introspecting would give you a certain indication of why is the import is hurting the way it is, or why are we being pained by the volatility in the consumer behavior or the consumption at the moment. Going straight to the question, Mohit, fundamentally, when China's, or let's say the China has built up capacity for the world for ages, the drawdown in the Chinese market would mean they would look at exports, and then exports are going to the tune of about 110 million ton this year. Obviously, there is a huge amount of tax and then barriers in the European and the US markets for China, and now recently Canada has come hard on the Chinese exports, which would mean the material will go into Southeast Asian market and the Indian market, either via Vietnam or directly to India. So now what happens particularly when the global market is under subdued or it's in the drawdown state is the first and the foremost that it is going to export the product that are value added, like Madhur rightly called out, and which basically first hits the supplies of the primary producers or the flat steel producers, right? Now, when that hits and then your landed price of the flat steel, let's say in the ports of Mumbai or the X-yards of Mumbai, are trading at a gap of, let's say, 4 or 5 rupees, I don't think the Indian flat mills are sought after anymore. So basically, then the large players have got two options: continue to correct or switch the product portfolio. So for example, they will switch, try and reduce the exposure to the flat, rather switch to the longs, where they have an advantages compared to the secondary because of the various approvals and the larger and the longer and the broader reach that they have in the country. So what happens in that due course is that if the demand remains subdued and there are no buyers, the gap between the secondary or the IFA member manufacturers, I call them mini mills, and the primaries drop, which means the aspiring customer preferred to buy the ISPs and not the secondary or the mini mill produced products. So that's the first and the foremost impact, which means you're forced to reduce your prices further, maybe below your ex-works prices. That's the first one. The second is the raw material prices. For example, if the subdued situation in the market, global markets, it will impact the raw material prices. Raw material prices will be under tremendous volatility. Larger mills do have exposure in terms of the hedging, etc. So to an extent they can cover it. But the smaller mills who have, let's say, consignment of scrap coming in from different markets, be it Turkey or the Europe or the US or Middle East, and there will be a change in the price by the time the cargo lands in the port, and the prices would have softened so much that you are buying raw material prices at a higher price than the finished product or the export prices. So this will have an impact on your commodity or your NR, basically, net realization. That's the second one. The third one, as I see it, is the prolonged subdued consumption, given the current status of the economy globally, also on the commodity cycle that we are seeing. It would result in customers being on the fence and not going for the stock-ups. That would again lead to correction. So the distributors or the dealers who are the strong partners of these mini mills and not so much on the direct buyers, they are again on the wait and watch mode, and they would put pressure on the mini mills to drop prices further. So basically, if you see, it is going to hit the net realization. Obviously, there will be sales will be down. Your input cost pressure will be on the higher side, and it is going to impact your bottom line a lot. So net, I think that's a hard times. It may not directly impact in terms of the sales, because they don't necessarily compete with these imported or the Chinese material that is coming in either directly or via Vietnam. But in an indirect way, it would impact the mini mills.
So basically, you want to say that all the, say, not steel manufacturers, we are focused on IFA members, they should now focus on product diversification, adding value-added products to their product line to tackle all these volatilities and all the eventualities if they face some tough competition from Indian bigger players, as well as some imported companies dumping their product over here.
Yes, I think well said. So I'll just give you another parallel, and I like this. Is that, we actually just simply follow my neighbor or my family member who is actually expanding. If somebody is putting TMT of 100 ton, I'll go and put 150, 200 ton. Or somebody is putting wire rod, I follow and put a 300 ton wire rod. Nobody actually goes and studies, investigates, evaluate if there is enough opportunity, or would there be a better, can I do better than the, mills that are there in my backyard? So I think that is the fundamental flaw. And then I guess it would have probably helped us. Everybody would have made money until now, but the next stage, the scale up would be a challenging one. You might see that while large companies or so-called the leaders within the clusters, I call them badshahs of the mohallas. We have about 16, 17 of them. They are the badshahs in their own rights. But I see that in the future, when you go up, the challenges are getting complex. The needs of the regulations are going to get phenomenally stringent. So then you are going to bound to remain, and whoever dares will basically get out of that quagmire and then will become the next big player within the region. Now I'll give you a simple facts. If you look at the TMT, which is where most of our member and the partner companies are, you take the top 25 of them, their market share of TMT would be in the range of 0.6 to 1.5. And the large ISPs that operate in the sector is operating between 2 to 9%, 9% being the mill which has a, or rather a company with a mill in the western region. So when you are in the 0.6 to 1.5%, what are you actually doing so different to remain in the relevance when things change so drastically going forward? So you have to dare to become bigger, better, and different. And that is, and you would see some examples in the certain geographies. You will find some of them in the eastern region, some in the central part of India, some in the western part of India. You will see some of them getting out of that comfort zone, being the next big mini mill, right? Progressive, we call them the progressive ones. So what it takes for the other members is to see and really evaluate, is that the position that I want to remain in, or do I have the capability and the bandwidth and can mobilize resources to get into the next stage? Now that next stage, they need to really scrutinize the product they wish to go after. Well, I'm not saying somebody who has built a solid brand in TMT could think about geographic expansion within India because your TMT requirement is going to go up. It's a question of whether you will be competitive enough to survive when others are growing. Let's say, for example, ISP's share of the market grew from 16% to now 29% in the TMT. While it comes at the expense of the SSPs, right? So your SSP contribution in the long products is nearly at about 60 to 70%, but in the flat it's below 10%. So you see the skewed interest of the SSPs in the long product category, and long product category to an extent dependent on largely government and individual buyers. And individual buyers are highly cost conscious. Unless you're going to co-create and co-develop a product which are meant for, which is going to bring value to them, well, you're going to see whether it's China dumping or not, you will still find going tough for these companies.
Thanks. Thank you, Sachin. So you have given a good